We begin in the glorious name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has blessed us with our faith and iman and so many uncountable favors. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in Islam. And of course, I take this opportunity to welcome you all to this very significant event. This event is not just a fundraiser, no. It's far more, it's far grander, and it's more important. It is an event whereby we support the families of the fallen journalists in Gaza in particular. This event stands to celebrate as well as to commemorate all our journalists who on a daily basis, out of their own will and choice, risk their lives to spread the truth, to allow you and I, to allow the world to see the reality of the horrors that is taking place in Palestine and especially in Gaza. We are honored here today in the struggle and of course to help all of them, even if it's in a small way, to continue their efforts and their mission in most importantly spreading the truth in honor of all those who has fallen for the truth. Now on that note, I'd like to call upon our dear Hafiz Yunus Juma to conduct the opening Qiraat. Hafiz Yunus Juma.
Yes, no, they will. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشئا متصدئا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر. سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah, brother Yunus or Hafiz Yunus Jumu'ah for their beautiful recitation. Moving on to our second item, I would like to call upon a pillar of strength in our community, a resilient activist for the Palestinian cause, as well as various other community works, as well as being a very successful and dedicated female entrepreneur, and that is Zainab Sattar, to present the welcoming address.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Zainab Sattar, honored guest Yumna Al Sayed, and esteemed guest, ladies and gentlemen. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most merciful, the most compassionate, who has blessed us with the opportunity to gather here tonight. On behalf of the organizing committee, it is my great honor to welcome you to this special fundraising dinner. This evening, we come together with a shared purpose to honor the legacy of Yumna Al Sayed, a courageous journalist who stood resilient in the face of adversity in Gaza, and to extend our support to the families of all fallen journalists in Gaza and Palestine. Their sacrifices have been profound, and it is our duty to stand by them in their time of need. As we begin this evening, I am reminded of the words of the great Palestinian poet, Mahmoud Darwish, who once said, "We have on this land which makes life worth living, and spirit of people that stand tall among the ruins." These words resonate deeply with the spirit of our gathering tonight. We are here not only to remember and honor those who have fallen, but also to affirm our commitment to the values of resilience, justice, and compassion that they embody. As we proceed with tonight's program, let us remain mindful of the cause that unites us and be inspired by the strength and dedication of those we seek to uplift. This gathering is not only a reflection of our shared commitment to justice and humanity, but also a testament to the enduring spirit of hope. We hope that this evening will be both meaningful and inspiring for all of you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our efforts and grant success to all our endeavors in aiding those in need who need it most. Once again, welcome, and we appreciate having you here tonight. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah Zainab for those very heartfelt words. And moving on to the next item, I would of course like to extend a very warm welcome to special guests that have made their way to join us here today. All our activists that are joining us here today, our Holocaust Committee, our members from the Pretoria Muslim Women's United, as well as Mr. Syed Mustafa and Mr. Saeed Mohammed from the Iranian Embassy and the Iranian Cultural Consulate. We welcome you to this event. We will now move on to our first speaker this evening. And of course, he boasts a very wide array of experience. And I would like to take the pleasure of introducing His Excellency, the former Palestinian ambassador to South Africa from 2015 to 2019. He was the Kuwait ambassador to South Africa from 2006 to 2010. And of course, is going to be our ambassador to Syria and Lebanon as well. And most notably, he was awarded the Star of Jerusalem for his noble contributions between South Africa and Palestine in promoting good relationships and in his efforts to support the Palestinian people and their just cause for freedom as well as independence. And of course, that man is sitting right next to me, Mr. Ashraf Suleiman, to present a few words.
الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for having guided us to Islam. Were it not for His guidance, certainly we would have gone astray. Peace and salutations to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his companions, and all those that follow in his footsteps. Chairperson, let me just make a correction. I was South Africa's ambassador to Kuwait from 2006 and to 2010. I was South Africa's ambassador to Palestine from 2015 to 2019. And inshallah, I hope to be leaving for Syria and Lebanon in 2 months' time. So this a way of contribution, correction. What I would like to share, and it is, I know that you haven't come to listen to me, and maybe I can share my 4 years or more experience with you on Palestine when we do get an opportunity, the next opportunity to talk about Palestine and in particular Gaza. I used to visit Gaza 3 to 4 times a year in 2016, 2017, and 2018. At the end of 2018, the Israelis didn't think it necessary that I went, and they banned me from going there. But be that as it may, I was in Cairo 2 weeks ago, being part of a group of activists, lawyers globally, and I'm not a lawyer. We gave political cover and diplomatic cover to the group that was there from all parts of the world. We had gone to interview those that have been injured in Gaza and made their way to Cairo, and also the evacuees that are now residing in Egypt. I think Sister Yumna will tell us more about their conditions. And I can tell you, our own experiences, it is not looking good. But we can talk about it later, maybe in the question and answer session. What I want to tell you, and I think this is important, I think many of us have visited Palestine. Very few of us may have visited Gaza. We may leave Palestine, but Palestine never leaves you. And this is the important message that I thought I'd like to convey both to Sister Yumna and her husband Salah, that South Africans are committed to the Palestinian struggle for justice, freedom, and independence. And that is our stance. And we should follow the events that are taking place. As we are sitting here in some part of Cairo this evening, some negotiations are taking place. But believe me, if that negotiations does not include, and I must add, 10,000 Palestinians in the West Bank since October 7 have been arrested without trial. What we know in South Africa as, under the apartheid era under the Internal Security Act, and they are part of the body of the Palestinian makeup. And that is important. They are political prisoners who were supposed to have already been released way back in the last negotiations in 2014. And one of the reasons that it failed was that those political prisoners, they have not been released. And they constitute the leadership of the Palestinians. But I think that is important to us to understand the dynamics that what is going on at this moment and time in Gaza in particular, but in Palestine as a whole. I'm raising the issue of the West Bank because there are 10,000 of them who have been arrested since October 7th and they haven't been released. And we know there are an equal number of Palestinians in Gaza who have been arrested and also not been released. Now, I think, again, I mean, it's not for me to tell you more, but there are more than 172 journalists that have been martyred since October 7th. Just journalists. There are thousands more of the more than 40,000 people who are shuhada. Many of them are women and children. In fact, most of them are children. And we heard the horror stories that are coming out of Gaza at this moment in time. My message to you, and of course it's a message to myself, that we must keep going. And I think we as a collective put pressure not on everyone, even our government. I say that very much as a government official, to make sure that the issue of Palestine is a preeminent issue in our foreign policy. I know many of us are worried because Minister Pando is not there, but I assure you, in Minister Lamola, we have an equally capable person, a person who joined Minister Pando in raising this matter at the ICJ. So I also want to take this opportunity of welcoming Sister Yumna, whom we used to listen to at Al Jazeera, and we were very concerned. Alhamdulillah, she is here to tell us what the rest of the 172 who are already martyred were going through, and those who are still, who continue to raise the Palestinian flag in Gaza in particular, and Palestine as a whole. That is my few message to you today, and I thank the chair and the organizing committee for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you this evening. Jazakumullah, shukran.
Jazakallah, Mr. Ashraf Suleiman, for those incredible words, who is a driving force for our community, and of course the Palestinian struggle, especially with his first-hand experience. On that note, I would like to extend the apologies of our dear Mr. Abdul Qadir Kurta, Uncle KK, who unfortunately could not be here with us today. But of course, he has mentioned that he's here with us in spirit. And before we call upon our keynote speaker, I would like to, of course, take the pleasure of inviting the senior anchor and presenter of Salam Media, Mr. Inayat Wadi, to give a few words.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. Sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa maulana Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. We praise, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all his blessings, and we send blessings, durood, on our beloved Master Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. On behalf of Salam Media, we'd like to thank you, Program Director, and the organizing team in Pretoria, for arranging this event, this wonderful event. It's nice, it's small, it's going to be informal. And in whatever way we look at this genocide and this attack on Gaza, whether we look at it as ordinary people, whether we look at it as activists, as formal organizations, as religious bodies, or even as media people, in each and every way, there is only one word, and that is condemnation of this genocide. Now, what is interesting, and we also sometimes look at the source, and I'd like to just quote one ayat from the Quran. And one alim actually mentioned this. And the ayat goes as, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, ربنا أخرجنا من هذه القرية الظالم أهلها واجعل لنا من لدنك وليا واجعل لنا من لدنك نصيرا. And this ayat, according to this alim, says that if this ayat was revealed in modern times, it would apply directly to the people of Gaza. Because this is about a nation of men and women imploring, calling out to the Almighty as the protector and as a helper. And this is the situation that the people of Gaza find themselves in. And at Salam Media, we found this very, very early. We have always identified with the cause of Palestine since inception, since the formation of Salam Media. And it's always been a priority. It's been top of our list. And this is the reason why we embarked on humanitarian journalism, purely as a result of Palestine. Because we recognize the fact that it is not the people of Palestine that owe the world. The world, and particularly the Muslim Ummah, owe a huge debt to the people of Palestine. These are special people. These are a select group of people that have been chosen by the Almighty to protect the honor and the dignity of a Muslim Ummah that is closely 2 billion strong. And at the same time, to protect the honor of our pride and joy, Masjid al-Aqsa. You will recall Shaheed Ismail Haniya, rahimahullah, when he declared the Al-Aqsa flood, when he declared the Tufani Aqsa, he mentioned that this is not only about the people of Palestine, this is about the Arab world, and this is about the broader Muslim world. And this is the reason why I say we owe it to the special selected group of people of Palestine. But also early on, when the war had actually started, this war was not only fought militarily, there was a huge media war. 50% of that war was fought by the military, but also there was this war fought in the media to win the hearts and minds of people, to sway public opinion. And we all have seen it. We've seen it across corporate media. We've seen it across mainstream media. We've seen the narratives. We've seen the lies. 40 babies beheaded. We've seen how they were debunked. And we've seen people like Piers Morgan over and over again. The very first question that he asked, do you condemn the actions of Hamas? Now, this was a war that we were up against. This was a war that we as a media were up against. And very, very early in the war, this is where Salam Media took this decision that relentlessly, without fear, without favor, we will continue being the voice of the voiceless. We will continue being the voice of the people of Palestine. And Yumna al-Said was identified in 2021 by our CEO, Shamsir Khan. In 2021 already, he had made that intention that we will get Yumna al-Said to South Africa. Today, she's sitting right next to me. It is a reality. And this is testimony to the vision of even independent media like Salam Media. And I must admit, we are up against the giants. We are up against corporates, massive funding, huge funding. And here you have one small little media outlet, no fancy offices, a staff of 15 people only, but committed and dedicated. So this is not only about numbers. It is about the commitment. It is about your sincerity. And at the end of it, dedication to make things happen. And Alhamdulillah, we've done it in the past. We've partnered with Pretoria. We all remember Dr. Max Gilbert, who was here last year. We recall Abir Zayad, who was here earlier on as well, and to highlight the plight of Al-Quds and Masjid al-Aqsa in particular. And today we have got Yumna al-Said over 320 days into this genocide. And Yumna herself, and when you get a deeper insight into the person Yumna al-Said is, courageous, brave, sincere, but also sacrifices. One will not, sometimes we sit in front of the television screen and here you see Yumna in that press jacket. You see Yumna in that helmet, but what goes on behind the scenes. And we, in the last few days, particularly myself, I've had this opportunity to get an insight into Yumna Al Said. Her husband, Salahuddin, who is here as well. We want to acknowledge your presence. We want to thank you as well for accompanying your wife with us as well. We know we've heard about your plight in Gaza as well. We know what has happened. And basically, everything had to be given up. We've heard about the children. We've heard, and I'm sure Yumna will share some of that with you. Really, it is gut-wrenching. It is heartbreaking. But without much ado, Yumna, once again, right here in Pretoria, Jazakallah, Jazakallah, Jazakallah. We can only say thank you to you. Sometimes words are just not enough, but we are proud. We are happy to have you here. And I'm sure the people out in Pretoria, especially in this restaurant this evening, looking forward to listening to you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is really and truly appreciated, the invitation for me to be among you here tonight. I can only thank the sincere organizers who have organized this dinner here tonight for so many reasons. The most important one for me is your interest and care to hear about Palestine and the people of Palestine. Many of you who are wearing the kufiyya or the Palestinian thobe, or even a shirt that has the Palestinian map, it just shows your sincere feelings and sincere honesty towards the Palestinians and Palestine. So I thank you for that. I thank you for remembering Palestine, for showing your dedication, your commitment, your remembrance. These past few days, I've spoken a lot about Gaza. I've spoken a lot about Palestine. And every single time I want to speak about Palestine, I think in my head, what am I going to talk about today? Because there are so many stories, there are so many events, there are so many things that you need to touch on. You need the people to know about, because they're all significant. And why I'm doing this is because this is the least that I can do for the people of Palestine. This is the least that I can do for my people. To share the suffering that they endure on a daily basis, every single day, with the population of the world. So I like the title, Glimpses of Gaza. Tonight, I'm going to share with you some of the glimpses of Gaza. And when I was just sitting here thinking to myself, this question hit me in my head. Wain بدنا نروح? Where shall we go? Today marks 323 days of an ongoing genocide. What does a genocide mean? We've been repeating this word a lot, that I feel that it has lost its actual meaning, or we've become numbed to what it might mean. When we say 323 days of genocide, we mean of ongoing bombs falling on all areas across the Gaza Strip. Whether you're in the north, whether you're in the central, whether you're in the south, these bombs are falling around you or on your head. or on your relatives or on your neighbors or your friends. If you're sheltering in one of the schools or hospitals that are overcrowded by thousands of people, you might still get hit, because every single Palestinian in Gaza is a legitimate target to the Israeli army. Those thousands in the schools, those thousands in the yards of hospitals, assuming that these are safe or relatively safe places, there are hundreds of thousands more who are in very, very thin plastic tents sheltering. But that's not the problem. The problem is that despite that these tents do not protect them from the heat of the sun, because when you enter that tent in the morning, afternoon, you can't breathe because there's no oxygen, because it's plastic. Do you know those greenhouses where we plant, where you can't stand it for like 5 minutes inside because there's no oxygen and there's just a lot of heat inside? This is exactly how it feels in the tents. And I went to these tents because I wanted to speak to people, to bring their stories from inside the tents, not just say that there are thousands living in tents. And of course, these tents are installed on the grounds. At night, in winter, it was super cold, and they were not protected from the cold. When it rained, every single time, and we all love rain, I used to get so upset. I used to feel so raged that it's raining, because I thought about those hundreds of thousands who are drowning in the rain. Those children who can't and don't have a choice, and their parents can't help giving them better than that. Toilets, and forgive me that I'm talking about toilets, but a very basic necessity of every human being, these tents, of course, have no toilets. Not even public toilets in the areas where these tents are installed. So people had to make primitive toilets. They dug pits in the ground. They tried to cover them with plastic or canvas sheets for privacy. And it was one every huge number of tents. So I used to see people standing in queues, waiting to be able to go to a toilet. But that's not the only problem. They had no water. They had no water for hygiene. They had no water to bathe. They had no water to wash their hands and faces. All these elements together, compounded, were the perfect way to spread infectious, contagious diseases among the population, among the children who are the most vulnerable. So we started seeing a lot of different infectious, contagious diseases spread among the children. When you would go to the hospitals, and I used to go a lot to film there, I would find mothers carrying their babies in all the corridors inside the hospitals, just sitting like that. The row of chairs would finish and you would find people sitting on the floor like that, like just next to each other. And every single mother has a child, a baby, has a baby who's not more than or less than 2 years old, with a cannula in that tiny little hand. And it really, really broke my heart. Even if you think that you want to help someone, you want to do something, the numbers are just enormous. It's the entire population. These scenes have all been exposed. These scenes have all been seen by people around the world. Humanity of governments, of rulers, we betted on the international law and humanitarian laws, and we lost our bet. Instead, we saw the hypocrisy, we saw the double standards, we saw the lies when it came to setting justice towards Palestinians. So back to my question, Wayne and Ruh, where do we go? Israel exactly divided the entire strip into small blocks and named it with numbers. So what they do, because they're very decent and they're a very moral army, every night they call out a number of blocks to evacuate. So that calling usually happens in the middle of the night. You know, when it's like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and whether you like it or not, you can't stand the tiredness, the exhaustion, the sleepiness. You just want to sleep. And God knows how many times I watched families and children run in the streets coming to take shelter somewhere close to where I was taking shelter, for example. Just like that in the middle of the night, because they were called to evacuate. Israel's normal strategy in previous wars was always to bombard Gaza in the middle of the night. Always the bombardment would start at 2 a.m. It's like that, 2 a.m. So we wake up terrified. Our children wake up terrified and scared. We stay until the morning awake. And then we have to go to our work, our schools, whatever. If it's just a simple military escalation, we're lucky it's not a war. Very tired and very exhausted and with very little hours of sleep. So that has been their strategy from the beginning. And then the homes. I feel that people have become numbed to watching homes being destroyed, rockets, missiles, bombs falling on homes and destroying them, on schools, on universities, on hospitals. A person's home is not just walls, but every time a Palestinian home is destroyed, we tell each other just to make it easy for that person. Don't worry about it. They're just walls. The important thing is that you survived. Your children survived. And then we go on. But for those who have been lucky and they survived the bombing of their homes, and it wasn't bombed over their heads, it has shattered them inside. Because these homes are not just walls. They are the memories, they are the happy and sad moments, they are the time that we spent, they are the fights that we fought, they are the good times, they are the bad times. And everything just goes in a blink of an eye. The numbers say that over 40,000 people in Gaza have been killed, and most of them are children. The British magazine Lancet said that it assumes that over 186,000 people have been killed. I will tell you how that happened. Because what you don't know is that those that are registered in numbers are the people that are identified, the full bodies of the people who have been brought from the killing. But there are thousands more who have not been identified or who have been brought out in pieces. So every time I saw the casualties, the killed and the injured going to hospital, I would go to the doctor responsible and I say, how many do we have today? And he gives me the total number for the morning. And I say, doctor, I've seen a lot more. And he says, Yumna, those are unidentified, or those are in pieces. So we don't know who they are. So we can only give the numbers of those who are identified by their families, by their neighbors, by friends, so that we have a name and an ID. And that's why the Ministry of Health was able to provide all the names in Arabic and English to debunk the Israeli allegations and American allegations, because I caught Biden saying these numbers may not be true because they are from Hamas ministry or health ministry. No, it's true. These numbers are not true because they are a lot more. But these are the numbers of the people that were identified. Back in December, this happened later, a lot after that, but this was the first time. 111 bodies of different ages of Palestinians were found. Some cut open without their organs, and all the bodies decomposed as they were released from a Shifa hospital after the Israeli army withdrew. So they sent them to us in Khan Yunis, and it was the first largest mass grave. And they were bodies of babies that were this small. And most of the bodies without their organs, but all of them decomposed. And We had to bury them all in one big grave together, men, women, and children, because they were not identified. Those 111 were not added to the list of the 40,000 because they were unknown. And of course, if you do watch the news, you've seen that there are so many other mass graves that have been discovered in the second siege of Shifa Hospital too, in Nasser Hospital as well. So this is just part of it, really. The question remains, وين بدنا نروح? The same question that Palestinians in Gaza now ask every single day. They shout, they want an answer, they don't know where to go. Because 1,900,000 Palestinians are just moving from area to another, not knowing where to go so that they don't get bombed. Israel bombs all the areas in Gaza, yet when it gives those evacuation orders, it is still saying, move to the known or designated safe zones. When there is not one safe zone. There isn't one safe zone. The problem really is how this world is like really silent towards all these atrocities and war crimes being committed every single day against an unarmed civilian population. I ask myself that every single day. How can they still go on like that? In Gaza, before I speak about that, let me tell you about some of the realities, or let me introduce Gaza to you. So when you introduce Gaza, it's a 365-kilometer long strip. It's long in shape. Gaza has been under an ongoing Israeli siege for the past 17 years before the 7th of October. Gaza has been called by the United Nations and international community an open-air prison. Did you ever wonder what an open-air prison looks like or feels like? It means that you have no right to leave when you want and to come when you want. It means that you can't plan for a vacation like all the other families in the world because you don't know when you will be able to leave and return. It means that you can't travel to study when you get a scholarship because you might register, or what we usually see is that people register for a visa, they get their scholarship, and then they just register their name for their turn to come to travel until the visa ends, and they never get to travel. And an open-air prison means that those children that are very sick and can't get the medical treatment required for their situation or condition in Gaza, most of them die in Gaza because they're not allowed to travel to the occupied West Bank or East Jerusalem for treatment in Palestinian hospitals. And if they're lucky, if this child is lucky enough to go for a treatment, they're not allowed to go with their moms or dads. because they're under the age of 60. So the parents have to look for their grandparents, for example, or a volunteering neighbor or friend to take your sick child to hospital and take care of him, because you are not permitted to go because you're under the age. And sometimes they don't find the person in the right time because you're given just 3 days to travel. So they send that sick child alone. One of the most heartbreaking stories was for a young girl in Gaza who was 5, 6 years old. That was before the war. She was not lucky enough to go with any of her parents. Her grandparents had died, and they did not find a suitable volunteer to go with her in the time of permit. So she was sent alone. The story of this young girl, this child, was told to us by the nurse in the hospital. She was so much in pain, but not just physical pain. The nurse said she was in so much mental pain because she cried every single night for her mother. So she did not respond to the treatment, and she died in hospital before she went back to Gaza to see her mother. And she's only almost 6 years old. So this is an open air prison. And the story of this young Palestinian child is repeated in thousands of other children in Palestine every day. An open air prison means that we do not have a cancer hospital for our children to be treated in. And after years, when we found or we got the funding and the opening of the first Turkish cancer hospital in Gaza, the adequate treatments and machines required to treat cancer for the patients of Gaza were not allowed to be entered by Israel. So if the child is only in the very first stages, he can get treatment there. But if he's in a severe condition of cancer, it's no use to him. This is just a glimpse of what an open air prison looks like. This is how our life was in Gaza, and yet we continued to live there. We had plans to settle in Gaza, to live in Gaza, to grow our children in Gaza, to educate them in Gaza. We did not want to evacuate. We did not want to migrate to a different country, to Europe, where life is much easier, because we love our land. We love our Gaza because we don't want to give up on it. And that is the reality of every Palestinian. Yes, there are many that are forced to leave because as parents, they want to find a better future for their children. And because they know that what their children have endured is unbearable, and they will continue the rest of their lives traumatized by what they have seen. But the majority wants to remain in that open air prison. There is a lot to talk about if I speak and I won't finish. And I don't want truly to spoil your evening more. But I want to really send an important message to all the people in all the places around the world that I go and speak about Gaza in. And that is, you have to keep on keeping the legacy of Palestine alive, because this is the most important thing. We are a population that lives under an occupation, that practices ethnic cleansing against our people, that practices confiscation of our lands, and that practices daily slaughter against our children. The map of Palestine every year shrinks until it is going to disappear because of the confiscating of those lands. But we know that these lands are illegal. These settlements that are taken from the land of Palestine and named Israel are illegal. And we are the owners. We are the true owners. We are the just owners. And international laws that have been designated to put this world in order, even if they don't bring us justice today, they're still on our side. At the end of the day, we will say that these laws that have been charted, these humanitarian laws, conventions, these resolutions are what represent us. But we need to keep the legacy of Palestine alive. Because yes, this genocide has taken a lot of souls, has destroyed 90% of Gaza. It has wiped 90% of Gaza away. That when you look at the pictures of those neighborhoods, of those streets and roads and areas and schools, you will no longer recognize them. You will no longer be able to identify what this neighborhood is or was. But the support of the people, the protests around the world, the calling for the end of a genocide, the calling for a free Palestine, this is what is going to bring the true and real change. The keeping of our heritage alive is what matters. The education, for you to educate your children, is a responsibility against the spread of the occupation. You have to tell your children the stories of Palestine, the stories of history of Palestine. Tell them what the kufiyya represents and how we tie it and what the colors are for. Show them the embroidery of Palestine. Show them the embroideries of every single city in Palestine and tell them what it represents and which city it represents. Call the cities of Palestine with their Palestinian names again. Call them Gaza, call them Yafa, call them Al-Quds, call them Ramallah, call them Al-Khalil. Teach your children the original, authentic story of Palestine. Because these generations are the generations that we depend on. Those protests of these young people who have fought and they have followed and they have learned a lot about Palestine across the world and go out and protest and call for a free Palestine. These are the people that have the power to bring a change. You have the power. You are the majority. Governments, people in power, officials, no matter how much power they have, they are the minority and you are the majority. And the majority always wins. You have to impose. You have to impose your beliefs. You have to impose that change that you believe in. I'm so sorry it took so long. Thank you so much.
Yumna Al-Sayed, I think we can salute you for your courage, your bravery, your honor in all that you do. And of course, I'm sure each and every one of us here had chills going down our spines. You spoke to our hearts and you gave us first-hand experience of what you were exposed to and what our brothers and sisters in Palestine and in Gaza are exposed to. And of course, this is why events like this is so important, to honor those who bring us the truth, those who open up our eyes, and those who make the world aware of the reality and allow us to take that much more action and urgency towards the genocide and the murder of innocents in Gaza and in Palestine at large. So on behalf of all those here today, on behalf of South Africa, we would salute you, Yumna Al-Sayed, as well as your colleagues. I want everyone to give her one more big round of applause. We would like to move forward to a very brief, I think, because of time constraints, Q&A session. And we'd like you to please keep your questions to the point and precise. Yumna is, of course, also in a rush for another appointment or a flight. And I'd like to call upon Mr. Inayat Wadi. He's going to be our moderator, overseer of the Q&A. Please, if you have a question, make sure that you raise your hands clearly, and Mr. Inayat will guide you through the process.
Jazakallah, Program Director, once again. And Yumna only provided us with a very, very brief insight, really. This is just barely scratching the surface. It's a tip of the iceberg. And believe me, for us who have been with Yumna for the last few days, and each one just opens up another dimension to this genocide. And each one brings out the horrors and what Yumna has obviously said in terms of let us not forget. And it's a very powerful message, a very profound message, where we know there is fatigue. We see it in the media fatigue, people fatigue, activist fatigue. But at the end of the day, we need to be relentless as well. So we're going to open up for questioning. We will take 3 questions at a time, but try and keep it as brief as possible. I know many of you are hungry as well. So, as soon as we can get the Q&A out, I'm sure then we can head towards meals as well. We are obviously, I know, as we mentioned, that we don't want to keep you too long. Ourselves as well. We arrived from Botswana. Yumna had an engagement this afternoon, one again now as well. So, it has been a long day as well. So let's just raise your hands and we will then take 3 questions at a time. No, I'm sure they'll be audible. I'm sure you will be audible. Sheba, as you a bit louder, please.
What was the most
What was the most heartbreaking experience you had? Okay, she's gonna give her mic. It's fine.
Too many, actually. Too many heartbreaking memories. Is this working? Is it? So basically, it's a genocide. So there is a lot that is heartbreaking, that is hard to convey, it's hard to recover from or get over. You want the most heartbreaking? You want the most heartbreaking? Will you be able to take it? Should I tell you the most heartbreaking or lighter? Tell me, the most heartbreaking? Will you be able to take it? Something lighter?
No.
Okay. Tell you the truth. Okay. So the problem is that it's too difficult for me, but I'll tell you. The most heartbreaking moment for me in this genocide was not something that happened with my family or my children. It was in a night in late November at Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis, when a residential home was hit by an Israeli missile, and ambulances started rushing to the complex, to the medical complex. And we journalists rushed quickly to the entrance with all the doctors and nurses that were standing there to fetch the injuries and the casualties. And one of the ambulances that are just right there in front of the ambulance, the entrance, the doctor opens the door of the ambulance from the side. He gets down with some injuries and the other one. And it's totally a chaos, such a chaotic scene. And I'm right there trying to observe the kind of injuries, trying to quickly count the numbers. And then this boy gets down from the ambulance. And he's hanging a blue backpack on his chest. And he is just all dusty and full of bruises everywhere. He's very quiet. And I just stare at him. He grabs my attention. And I stop doing everything and I just stare at him. And I look at the backpack that he has on his chest. And I can't forget that scene. And I see blood dripping from under the backpack. So he asks me, "Do you know what I have here?" And I freeze. And I feel that the entire world has stopped. And I feel that I want to feel unconscious. I don't want to know. I don't want to understand. I don't want to answer. And then I answer him. I say, "What do you have here?" And he puts his hand to open the backpack. And quickly I put my hand over his hand because I don't want him to open the backpack. And he tells me, "My brother, Ahmed, he's 5 years old. And I don't have the courage. I don't have the courage to film him. I don't have the courage to raise my phone and to ask him. I don't have the courage to document this horror. I pull a doctor running around me, and I point at this little boy, and I tell him, we need to help him. And he opens the bag quickly in a rush. And he screams, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Just like that, like. And he calls other people from there to take him to the morgue. And I stay there, standing, not even being able to move. I haven't been able to speak about this for a month after I came out of Gaza. I didn't have the courage. I didn't have, every time I closed my eyes to sleep, I saw him in front of me. I didn't even ask him about his name, but I blamed myself so much that I didn't film it, that I didn't document it, that I didn't show it to the world, that I didn't inform, not because of the popularity or anything, because I thought to myself, this is what is going to stop this genocide. No leader, no president, no person in power is going to see this, know this, and let this genocide continue. So I blamed myself for days about how much I'm a coward, how much I'm irresponsible, how much I betrayed Ahmed and his brother. And I really felt so bad towards myself. 1 week later, I saw on TV a father carrying 2 plastic bags of pieces of his boy and his girl, carrying them in both his hands and screaming, "These are my kids. These are my children. This is my son and this is my daughter." And I thought, that's it. This is all going to end now. But that was in late November. And now we're in the end of August 24. And that did not change anything. It did not stop. Just days later, when nothing happened, that's when I stopped blaming myself. That's when, for once, I just had some peace from that guilt that I carried inside me. But I will never have peace with Ahmed and his brother, because I will never, ever recover from that. And I don't think any human being can ever recover from seeing that. And really, honestly, despite all the difficulties, despite all the challenges, the struggles, the cries, the screams of my own children, this is the worst moment I lived in this genocide. And it does not compare to anything else that I have seen or lived.
Sorry, let me just get the mic there. I think it's Just make it easier.
Yeah.
That's the money we donate to these GoFundMes. That is reach the families in Gaza and how everything is being won.
So, as I understand, the GoFundMe is that it has to be an account, a bank account in certain countries only that are authorized to have the GoFundMe bank account, and many Palestinians in Gaza at the beginning, like before Israel took over the border and it was completely shut, did the GoFundMe because they wanted to evacuate Gaza. And on Instagram, I did a video about why a lot of GoFundMe links and crowdfunding accounts for Palestinians from Gaza are being spread now. And I wanted to explain to the people that, or the reason why they really are turning to that, because it's their only solution, because you basically have to pay to leave Gaza. You have to pay to be able to escape this genocide. And almost everyone in Gaza have lost everything, their homes, their properties, their businesses. And these days, every single day that people live within this genocide, it costs them a lot of money because there are no supplies. And those supplies that do rarely, scarcely enter are in very, very high prices. So this is their only solution. How the money reaches Gaza is that, yes, when this money is donated through that friend or relative, they can transfer it to a Gazan bank account. But the problem is that you can receive funds in Gaza, but there is a high tax that is paid, which is from 20 to 30%. So that is deducted. That is not, I'm not talking about the taxes for the GoFundMe. This is something else. This is just a Gaza-based tax alone. So even if it's not GoFundMe, when you send someone $100 in Gaza to help them out, they receive it as 70 because there is no money. There's no like means of finance in Gaza now. So people use the money, they take it as products and so on. So for them and those who take it as money, okay, in some cases, there is a very high tax put on them. So yes, they can receive the money through their Palestinian bank accounts.
So I think there's a brother.
Okay, last.
The world is, I'll be loud enough. The world has condemned the genocide. Most of the countries' leaders have condemned the genocide.
True.
Very few Arab countries have condemned the genocide. Can you give us your opinion about the Arab countries?
Every single country that is silent is complicit in this genocide. That is my opinion.
My question is to Ashraf. In our last meeting with a few months ago with Lady Fanta, she assured us that South Africans serving in the idea will be arrested. I have yet to see one being arrested. So can you tell me when this is going to happen? That we should start making an example. There's about 15,000 South Africans serving in the idea. They should be charged for war crimes.
Yeah, and the law is straight in that regard. The Foreign Military Assistance Act that makes these people, whoever participates, complicit. I think that is something.
Is it because they choose and white
No.
that they won't be arrested?
No.
Are
I
they
don't know.
afraid of the Zionist movements in South Africa? I think definitely.
No,
And this is
look, it is.
not one arrest has been made in 4 months, not one single arrest. These are murderers. They have blood on them.
I agree with you.
If the government doesn't do it, then I think we should start.
Oh, I think
Find them because they're enemies.
Can I just make a comment on this?
Sorry about the emotion.
No, that's fine. I think it's a valid question, and I think it's a huge concern for us in South Africa. As a media, we have addressed this issue. There is an attorney called Ziad Patel, and I know they've done a lot of work in terms of preparing those dockets. And the sad part is, for 15 years, some of these dockets have been lying with the National Prosecutions Authority. And this matter has been taken up over and over again in terms of why the refusal to prosecute those that are serving in the IDF. Now, we know Dr. Naledi Pandor alluded to this. She spoke about it, but now that she's not in office, yesterday we were at a session in Botswana where we had the United Nations, we had the diplomatic corps as well. And we also had the South African ambassador to Botswana, who was present as well. And she attended last night's event as well. And obviously, the key issue here is to look at South Africa, and not South Africa, but also the African continent in terms of how they are actually seeing this genocide. And there was this call to look at an African position as well. And it is something that is, from a media perspective, we are pushing. We are talking to the attorneys. We are talking to those who have been at the forefront of preparing these dockets. And I'm sure what we will try and do from a media perspective, we'll try and get a lot more clarity. That's all I can say.
Uncle Inayat, we have a question from the floor to the panel. And it is as follows. The question on everyone's minds are, South Africans have been aiding Palestine and Gaza for over 20 years now. Since the war, from the 7th of October, we've been sending money, monetary aid through fundraising events like this. Is the money being received and going through the right and relevant channels on the ground in Gaza?
I think when we're looking at South Africa, and South Africa's got a whole host of humanitarian organizations, relief organizations. Many of them are very, very prominent. Many of them are actually known to us. And this is the work that they do. We speak to them from time to time, and all the major relief organizations, whether we're talking about the Al Imdad Foundation, the Africa Muslims Agency, Gift of the Givers, Islamic Relief, South Africa. These are all relief organizations that are well known, that are, renowned from a South African perspective, but also many of them have got footprints all over. Now, we know that a number of relief organizations have partnered with relief organizations who have got their presence. At this point in time, from what we know, is a lot of the relief effort is actually being channeled in. I'm sure, Yumna, you can try and confirm that for us as well, where it's actually channeled via Egypt. There is no other way to actually get that relief. And I think many of us have seen visuals. We've seen it on Al Jazeera. We've seen thousands of trucks with relief aid. Now, all of that is taking place. Many of these relief organizations have got a footprint. They've got a presence. They have been allocated warehousing space where they pack all of that, and it gets onto the truck. From there onwards, it gets over the Rafah crossing, and now there is no Rafah crossing anymore. The Israeli army has taken over. So I'm not too sure what is happening at this point in time. We know there have been a lot of concern. We know that even when the trucks get into Gaza itself, sometimes 75% of it is actually taken out and only 25% reaches. And perhaps, Yumna, if you'd just like to comment on that as well, please.
So before the Rafah border was taken over by the Israeli army, there was little amounts of humanitarian aid entering. At times, they were better than other times, but not the needed amounts, because at the best times, it was 100 trucks when there was a temporary ceasefire for 5 days, for example. And other than that, it was just like drops of these thousands, really hundreds of trucks that were just standing in the Sinai desert with everything inside them rotting. That some of the humanitarian aid in these trucks, when they entered Gaza, the tins of the food, the canned food, had worms and were rotten everywhere inside. So they were no use to the people. They had to throw them because they were just filled with worms and rot. Since Israel took over the Rafah crossing, nothing has been entering from it. But the Kerem Abu Salim crossing, which is under sole Israeli control, does allow, I can't even say very little amounts because I would not be fair. Sometimes, once or twice, I guess, very little amounts of humanitarian trucks. So I know this because of a personal friend of mine, Arwa Damon, for the organization of Inara. And she just came out of Gaza, and also at the beginning of August she was in Gaza, and she told me, like, we were speaking, and how is it, she had 8 trucks entering with her. She told me 3/4 of the 8 trucks were halted, and we were allowed with only 1/4 of what we brought the people, which altogether was not even enough for anything. But yet they only let 1/4. And that is because, for example, Inara is a very international and well-known humanitarian organization. So you see, this is how exactly it looks like. Now, recently, nothing is entering. If UN organizations like UNICEF, UNRWA, OCHA, other organizations are lucky, and with a lot of pressure, they might be able to let in very, very little amounts of aid, but that is not happening currently. That is not happening now at the time being. So you want to do any humanitarian initiatives, it's going to be from inside Gaza, which is almost impossible because of the soaring prices, and there are no supplies found. So until there's some kind of agreement made to allow for a border to open, to allow for humanitarian aid to enter or flow in, until that moment, nothing can be done.
Allow me just to add, because I spent 4 years, as you know, in Palestine, and I must congratulate South Africa for the phenomenal work that you as part of the collective, contribute towards humanitarian aid and assistance in both the West Bank and in Gaza. Now, I know, and I can Al-Imdad, let's take the easier one, they are registered with Jordan, and through Jordan, who have an agreement with Israel, they are able to take in some. That is at this moment in time. We are now assisting Gift of the Givers to register with Egypt. You would have, I think, many of y'all may have seen what has gone through, successfully has gone through the Gift of the Givers, but that we had to do it with the Egyptian government and through ICRC. So we're working on a plan that gift of the givers will also be registered with Egypt. That will probably ease humanitarian aid and assistance to go through. So hopefully that is something that we could do. On the issue related to the question of those participating in the war, what we have to do as a community, we need to get lobbyists. I think Brother Inayat had spoken about Ziad Patel, who's done phenomenal work. And I know they had several meetings with the NPA. The issue of prosecution lies with the NPA. I know through what the Minister of Intelligence said in her interaction with the community through a press conference, said they've got 85 names that they have. I mean, how far did I don't work in the.
That you have to trust countries like Egypt and Jordan who are complicit. So, these are backstabbers, and you're going to trust them to get aid. How do you overcome this?
You want an answer?
I just want to answer that. There is no choice except for Jordan and Egypt.
That's the safest part.
That is the reality of the geography, and that is the reality of the political, economic, geographical situation and position and location of Gaza, unfortunately.
Okay, Jazakallah Yumna for those very insightful, very heartbreaking stories that I hope one and all can hold it with them. I know it's very difficult, and pass it on. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for the Q&A session. And of course, a lot of you are looking forward to having something to eat. So we bring ourselves to the closing of the program. On this note, I would like to call upon a very special individual to conduct the vote of thanks. And of course, without her, this event would not have been possible. She is a Palestinian activist, a member of the Pretoria Muslim Women's United, a founding member of Artillery Group, creating resistance and awareness art for the people, the oppressed people of Palestine throughout our community at large, a strong and independent woman, as well as a successful entrepreneur, and that is Miriam Abu Baker. We'd like to call upon her to do the vote of thanks.
Assalamu alaikum. Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, all thanks and praises are due to the Almighty. On behalf of the organizing team, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for your presence and support at this special fundraising dinner tonight. We come together not only to honor the legacy of Yumna Al-Sayed, a brave journalist who stood firm in Gaza, but also to raise much needed funds for the families of fallen journalists in Gaza and Palestine. Our deepest thanks go to the team of Salam Media, whose dedication has brought us all together this evening. We also wish to acknowledge the tireless efforts of the Pretoria Muslim Women's United and Al-Khazari College, who played an instrumental role in making this event a reality. Special mention must be made of Uncle Abdul Qadir Kurta, who could not be with us tonight, Mr. Mohammed Kauthar Razak, Auntie Hafsa Bika, and Zainab Sitar, whose hard work and commitment have been key to the success of tonight's event. Your contributions have not gone unnoticed. Lastly, we wish to express our profound appreciation to all our sponsors, including but not limited to Communica, and each individual who contributed in any way. Your generosity and compassion are what make nights like these possible. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all abundantly for your support and grant success to our efforts to uplift those in need. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah Miriam for those heartfelt words. And of course, for taking the time to be here and make this day a success. And to all of you who have worked tirelessly to make these events and so many other events a success, which is so very vital for the struggle for the freedom for the oppressed people of Palestine. And of course, I know a lot of us do have more questions, and I suppose the panel will be available after the closing to ask a few questions informally at your request. So finally, to end the program, I'd like to, of course, ask our dear Uncle Inayat Wadi to deliver the closing dua. Before that, Miriam's got something special to say. Miriam?
Yumna, on behalf of the organizing committee and Pretoria Muslim Women's United, we just put together a little something for you just to remember your journey in South Africa and to know that South African people always stand with Palestine.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم انصر المجاهدين في كل مكان اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين اللهم انصر المجاهدين في فلسطين ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Ladies and gentlemen,
بالروح بالدم نفديك يا أقصى يا فلسطين جزاك الله.
ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure a lot of you have been inquiring